Number 1. I grew up in England, in a small southern town. Lived there my entire life. It's a sleepy place, far from the bustle of London or any other big cities. When I turned 18, however, something bizarre started happening there, and seemingly only happened to me. I started seeing a new face around town, a man who looked to be in his early 40s. His skin was pasty and grey-looking. Big, dark bags hung under his eyes. Even from a distance, I could see that those eyes had a sickly, yellow tinge to them. Honestly, it looked like the guy hadn't slept in years. You know how some people just have that unsettling vibe about them? Well, this guy certainly had it in spades. Now, when I say I started seeing him around town, I mean I encountered him everywhere, all the time, at least once every day or two. Sometimes I'd get on a bus, and he'd be there, sat at the back. Sometimes I'd be in a store, only to look out the window and see him looking in at me. No matter where I saw him, he'd always be staring at me with those wide, sickly, tired eyes. He never came up to me or said anything. He'd just stay at a distance, examining me, I guess. After staring at me for a few seconds or so, he'd always just walk off along the street. I ignored him as best as I could at the start, assuming he was just some new loony who'd moved to my town. We have more than our fair share of weirdos here, believe me. Over time, his presence became more persistent. I'd start seeing the guy twice a day, and he'd stand there, gazing at me for longer and longer periods of time. Eventually, I'd had enough, and decided I was going to tell him to leave me alone. Whenever I'd go to approach him, though, he'd just quickly walk away, usually keeping his eyes on me as he did. Sometimes he'd even walk backwards away from me, keeping his eyes on me the entire time as he disappeared into the crowd. Even on the rare occasions that I'd run after him, I'd always lose him. He'd turn down a side street or an alleyway, and when I went to follow him in, he would already have vanished out of view. It freaked me out that nobody else ever seemed to react to this creepy man in my town. I mean, aside from the tired appearance, he looked ordinary enough, but you'd have thought that a guy staring wide-eyed at a much younger person would have drawn some attention. It never did. It was like he was invisible to everyone except me. I asked my family if they'd ever seen a pale, weird man around town. They never had. After a while, I tried my best to ignore the guy. He was just some harmless old man with a social disability. That's why he always stares at me ominously, I thought. I never saw him around town staring at anyone else, though. I only ever saw the guy when he was staring at me. As the months went by, I started seeing the man less and less. The sightings went from 9 or 10 times a week, down to only 5 or 6 times. Then only every other week, every other month. Eventually I stopped seeing him altogether. I figured he'd gotten bored of his little game or whatever he was up to. After not seeing him for a while, I forgot all about him. A few years passed. I was in my early 20s, and I hadn't encountered the man for a long, long time. Well, one night, after I'd been out drinking with my friends at a local pub, I found myself walking home alone. It was sometime around midnight, maybe a little before, maybe a little after, when, out of the blue, the heavens opened, and it started to rain extremely heavily. I rushed to a nearby bus shelter, seeking cover from the rainfall. This was a secluded part of my small town, right on the very edge, so everything was silent, apart from the pounding of raindrops on the ground, and the quiet buzz of the electric orange streetlights that lit my path back home. I sat there in the bus stop, waiting for the rain to ease up, when, from down the path that led to my house, I heard a single set of footsteps thumping against the pavement, kicking up water that had pooled on the ground. Whoever was approaching me was humming a quiet, slow-paced song to themselves. I didn't recognize the tune. Just another person on their way home from a night out, I thought. Probably drunk. Wait, there aren't any pubs or bars in that direction. The soaked figure stepped under the orange light near my bus shelter, and I could finally make out his face. It was the man I had seen years before, the same dark bags hanging under his eyes. He moved under the same shelter as me, stopped right in front of me, and turned to face me. I was overcome by a strange sense of calm that I've never felt before as I heard him speak for the first time. "I'm sorry about before. I made a mistake. The timing wasn't right." I sat there, listening intently. "It's never happened before, so I thought about taking you out of term for my ego's sake. But that wouldn't have been right. So I just wanted to tell you. I'll be waiting." "What will you be waiting for?" I asked. "Next time, we'll meet under different circumstances. You'll be older. I'll be younger. I'm not sure if you'll recognize me." I stared at him with a blank expression, not sure how to interpret his words. He just smirked at me. "It's okay. You won't see me coming anyway." With that, his face softened for the first time. He dug his hands deep into his pockets, stepped out from under the shelter, back into the pouring rain, and continued on down the street in the opposite direction he approached me from. He kept walking until he was out of sight. The rain stopped 2 minutes later. The strangeness of the encounter finally struck me. I don't know why it hadn't before. I rushed home and double-locked all my doors. Since that night, I've yet to see the man around my town again. I still live there, though I've been planning on moving for a while now. The place just has this weird aura about it ever since that night. I have no idea if this guy was just some lunatic who likes to play sick games on people, or if he's something even more sinister. To this day, I'm still waiting for him. Number 2. I'm a private investigator in a small town in central Ukraine. For the sake of my business, I can't reveal which town exactly. Heck, I probably shouldn't even be sharing this story to begin with, yet here we are. Most of the cases I've worked over the years have been unremarkable to say the least. I specialize in infidelity and spend most of my working days spying on cheating husbands and wives, then reporting back to my client, letting them know whether their partner is innocent or guilty of double dipping, so to speak. A few years back, though, I worked an unusual case, one that ended up being much darker than I anticipated. It all started when a husband and wife entered my office. They hadn't even booked an appointment. They didn't need to. Just from glancing up at them, I instantly knew who they were. The Roshchas, by far the richest people in our area. They had the biggest house, nicest car. Everybody knew they were hot stuff. I asked them to take a seat and tell me how I could help them. "Sir," they explained to me, "it's our daughter, Sophia. She's run away with her new boyfriend, and we have no idea where she is. They've only known each other for a couple of weeks. They left 2 days ago. Look, she left us a note." The father handed me a crumpled up piece of paper. It read as follows. "Dear Mother and Father, I've decided to elope with my boyfriend, Andre. He's won my heart, and I wish to start a new life with him across the border. I don't know when I'll be back, if ever. Don't cry for me, for he makes me happier than anyone deserves to be. Forever yours, Sophia Roshcha." They told me this was completely out of character. Not to mention, the handwriting didn't look like hers at all, and the words didn't sound like something she had put. It was all too formal. They tried calling Sophia, but she never answered. The family immediately went to the police, begging them to help find their daughter. The authorities were strangely unhelpful. They said there was no reason to be suspicious, and that the girl had just left on her own terms. The family even offered to pay the cops, seeing how rich they were and all, but even still, they refused to look into the case. That's why they came to me. I was the only person who'd be willing to help them look for her. I asked if there was anything they could give me to help me get started. They gave me several pictures of Sophia and her new boyfriend, Andre, a very handsome young man in his late 20s. Apparently, they had to snap the pictures secretly. Andre really hated being on camera. "Sir, that's not all," they told me. "You see, the reason we came to you specifically. This morning, we received an anonymous letter in the mail. We have no idea who it came from. Here." I opened the precisely folded letter and read it. "To the Roscha family, your daughter Sophia is in grave danger. Andre is not who he claims to be. The police won't help you. It may already be too late. Go to this man for help. It's your best chance. Signed, a friend." The man he named in the letter was me. The plot thickened. I agreed to help the family, told them I'd make the case my priority. They told me to do whatever I had to do. Money wasn't a factor. Problem was, with 0 leads, it was hard to know where to start looking. Turns out, a lead came to me. An hour after Sophia's parents left my office, I received a call from a private number. An unknown male voice spoke. "Listen closely. Andre will be at this location at 8 p.m. He won't be alone. It could be dangerous. If you go, be careful." I jotted down the location the stranger told me. A restaurant in the nearest city, maybe a 45-minute drive away. I then asked him the obvious question. "Who am I talking to?" "A friend. Whatever you do, don't tell the parents." "How do I know I can trust you?" "I've already said too much. Good luck." The line went cold. No doubt it was the same guy who sent the letter to the Roschas. I thought about calling them, but decided to heed the stranger's warning. Instead, I grabbed my camera and hopped in my car outside, drove to the restaurant the guy mentioned. I made it there around 8:15. I entered and made my way to the bar, ordered a soft drink. I subtly scanned the room. There, on the corner table, was Andre, the supposed boyfriend. So much for running and eloping to another country. He was sat with a girl. It wasn't Sophia. What the hell was this guy up to? I kept an eye on them, biding my time. They paid their bill. I paid mine. They left together. I followed behind at a distance. They both got into a car outside. I got into mine. They had no idea I was tailing them as they drove off. After about 20 minutes of driving, I was startled when I saw them turn off into what looked like an abandoned factory complex. Not exactly a romantic spot. I pretended to continue on down the road, straight, then quietly pulled off to the side and switched off my headlights. I decided to get out of my car and walk into the factory grounds, not wanting Andre to know I was there too. I sneaked through the gate and into the complex. I watched as Andre switched off his engine outside the old factory. To my surprise, 2 other men emerged from the abandoned building. They were large and skin-headed, with a look of cruelty about them. That's when I heard muffled female screaming coming from inside Andre's vehicle, which only got louder as the 2 men opened the passenger side door and dragged Andre's date out. She was kicking and struggling as they dragged her into a black van waiting nearby. God damn it, human traffickers. I couldn't sit there and do nothing, but what could I do? I was unarmed. The only thing I had to hand was my camera. I lifted up the device and covertly snapped several images of the men and their license plates. The engine of the black van roared and began to make its way towards the gate I was next to. Christ, if the headlights shine on me, I'm toast. I turned and sprinted towards my car down the road on the left, the sound of the van getting louder as it approached me. I made it inside my car. The van pulled out of the complex. Please turn right. Please turn right. Damn it, it turned left. As it came to pass me, the driver turned his head, and there was no doubt he saw me huddled down in my seat. He continued on a little further down the road before I saw the van's brake lights flare. Next thing I knew, Andre's car pulled up right beside me. This was it. This was the end. Andre looked me straight in the eyes, gave me the most sinister smile I've ever seen in my life, and raised up his hand with his fingers in the shape of a gun. He pretended to shoot me, then gave me a wink and drove off behind the black van. I drove off in the opposite direction. I, of course, passed on all the information and evidence I'd collected to the police. They paid it absolutely no attention, and I immediately knew why. They were almost certainly in the pocket of whatever syndicate was behind the trafficking. You see, from what I know about this sort of thing, Andre was likely a recruiter for their organization, hired because of his good looks, charisma, and total lack of conscience. His job was probably to travel around to different towns and cities. His boss would give him money to wine and dine the girls, buy them expensive gifts, etc. He was the stereotype of what women look for in a man, at least on the surface, so it was easy for him to win their hearts. Then, once his prey was head over heels for him, he'd lure them to their doom, just like a human Venus flytrap. He'd lead them to wherever their organization had set up their temporary base of operations. As soon as they got into the car with him, it was already too late for them. They'd be forced into trucks, carted off to some secret location, and then auctioned off to the highest bidder. Their friends and family would likely never see them again. Andre was just one small cog in the machine. Unfortunately, the capturing and selling of other humans is the most profitable crime there is, so even if the police were after Andre, it wouldn't change much. The world keeps on spinning, and for as long as it does, there's gonna be evil living on it. I never did find out who the so-called friend was who sent the letter to the Roshchas and called me with the tip-off. My guess would be one of the local cops who knew something was going on. He knew he couldn't intervene, but felt the need to help out with the case anyway. He was right though. It was already too late for Sophia. Sadly, the corruption just ran too deep. In the end, I never asked Sophia's parents for any money. Ultimately, I decided to tell them that Sophia really did run off with Andre. I wanted to save them from heartbreak, from knowing that their daughter suffered the worst fate imaginable. I still ask myself whether I should have told them or not. Keeps me up some nights. Number 3. I'm from Ohio, but not one of the highly populated, dense city areas. I'm from a little town on the edge of those, surrounded by cornfields. It's a very small community. I lived at home with my parents at the time. I would have been about 14 years old. My mother is a very nice lady. She knows almost everyone in town, and has a reputation for being one of the nicer people working at the local pharmacy. Since she knows everyone, and the town's so small, everyone knows where everyone lives. It wouldn't be hard to track her. We literally live a street down from the store. A man had become infatuated with her. I don't think it helped that they met once a week to fill out his prescriptions. He offered to come over several times. She declined as nicely as possible. Then he got more pushy, offering to take her on dates and the like. My mum's married. She wears a ring on her finger and is very much in love with my father. Plus, it's not like this guy is some sort of superstar either. Usually I wouldn't go for the low-blow insults, but after what he did, I'm comfortable calling him scum. He's about 5'8", very overweight, greasy, has a grey and short, curly beard, and the top of his head is bald. He's built like your average hillbilly, one that showers even less. His name is Dave. Now, imagine it's the summer. I'm home alone by myself, playing online video games. The windows are open, the front door's ajar. The glass one in front of it's closed, but a draft comes in under it. My dad works not too far away, and I'm supposed to call him first if anything goes down. This is after weeks of my mum turning Dave down. Dave had shown up multiple times at our house unannounced. He drove his lawnmower since he couldn't drive a car, and had been begging to join my father's band. My dad repeatedly shot him down every time. Anyway, I'm sitting in our living room. If you look out the window at the front, you can see the driveway that leads to the garage. I can hear that damn lawnmower pulling up outside, and I pause everything, muting my friends online, praying he just goes past. But he doesn't. Out of the corner of my eye, I watch him get off his lawnmower. He's holding something I can't quite see. I have anxiety, and at this point, I'm already scared of him. He's bigger than me, and since he eyes up my mum, I'm sure he's got some gross thoughts about me too. I'm not ready to confront him, so I get up and flee to my room, where I shut the door. I can hear him trying the front door. He shouts to see if anyone's home, yelling that he can see the TV's on. I'm in my closet, texting my dad frantically that he's here, and I need him to come home and help me. Then I can hear Dave climb inside through an open window. He's now in the house, stomping around just in the living room. I feel like I'm gonna cry. My mum never told me exactly what he needed medicine for, but I know that it can't be anything good. I wonder if he's off his meds, and that's why he's gone psycho. I hear him drop something blunt on the ground. Whatever it is, he's dragging it behind him, just pacing through my house. It's something heavy, and I can feel my blood running cold as he works his way up to my room, the only door that's closed. I try to keep my breathing at its quietest level, and for a moment, he just stands at my doorway. Then, he picks up the object and walks away. I can hear him leave through the window he came through. My dad replies to my message, saying he'll be home any moment. He's right. After about 5 minutes of me crying alone in the closet, I hear him pull in. I hear him arguing with Dave outside. This is what my dad told me happened. I was pulling in when I saw Dave standing in our backyard, piling some firewood at his feet. He'd opened up our shed and was taking it out. I said, "Hey, did you just go in my house?" When he turned around, that SOB was holding an axe. Not just a wimpy one either. A fire axe. The thing was huge, and it looked sharp. I could hear him chanting something over and over, and he wouldn't respond to anything I asked him. He just kept repeating, "Mouse is in the closet. Gonna start a fire," over and over. I still feel like I'm gonna pass out just thinking about this story. We called the police, and when they came, they took him away for questioning. He didn't strike out violently at all, just went into their patrol car without question. He wasn't charged with anything. They just put him in a home since he's past 70 years old. His brain had just deteriorated so much that I guess he thought it would be normal to drop by. Never gave any sort of details about why he wanted to start a fire. I don't know if he wanted to burn me alive in the closet or set the whole house ablaze. My mother, of course, was horrified. Now when customers ask her personal questions or try to be smooth, she shuts them down instantly. Still, I do wonder what would have happened had I confronted him when he came inside. Best not to think about it, I guess. Never saw him again. It's been years, but I can't get that out of my memory. Mouse is in the closet. Gonna start a fire. Hey guys, Lizzie here, and thank you very much for listening. So how about you? Are you from a small town, and do you have a scary story to share? Well, send it in to me, and maybe I can read it out in the next installment. That is, if I do a next installment of this. Be sure to smash that like button and let me know that you enjoyed the video. If not, well, I guess I'll be doing something else. A huge thank you to all my supporters on Patreon, especially my biggest supporters. Ray Price Burton, Marley Wright, Crawford K. MacDonald, Son of the Emperor, Monica Mendoza, Alex Greensall, Philip Westra, Gina Valera, Procupidine Natter, John Crouch, James Labour, Crazy Mask Parade, Anna May Wimp, Maricruz Cardano, Victor Javier Fonseca Ruiz, Sarah Ramirez, Kat Mayers, Samuel Cotton, Andrew Romans, Sloane Crawford, Mitchell Allen Herrera, Charles Wilson, and Nadine. Thank you guys so much for your support. It really helps the channel out, what with YouTube being so anti-horror nowadays. We're all getting demonetized left, right, and center, so every little helps, every little helps. Anyway guys, that's it for this time. Keep your eyes out for the next video, and I'll see you guys very, very soon. Until then, you all stay spooky. And remember, the best things happen in the dark.